We're not a get out the vote operation here in the Secretary of State's office. We are an education and informational hub for the public.
Welcome to 701 Civics. And today we're talking with Mr. Michael Howe, the Secretary of State for North Dakota. As the Secretary of State, Mr. Howe has quite a few different hats that he wears, from promoting transparency and accountability in voting and state elections to being a Commissioner of Combative Sports. We cover a wide variety of topics, and I think you'll really enjoy today's discussion. Be sure to check out the show notes for links for the Secretary of State website and various pages associated with the Secretary of State. Thanks for joining us. I'm joined today with Secretary of State Michael Howe, and is going to fill us in on the Secretary of State's office and the duties that the Secretary has. So if you could, tell us just a little bit about yourself and maybe your path to becoming the Secretary of State.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me here, Brian. Grew up in Castleton, North Dakota, fifth generation farmer. Grew up on the farm, went to North Dakota State University. Upon graduation, I moved to Washington, D.C., was there for 2 years and worked for North Dakota's Congressman Rick Berg in agriculture policy. After my work in D.C., I worked for the North Dakota Corn Growers Association, did communication work and policy work. And then I went back to our family farming operation. And then a couple years later, our local legislators were both retiring, Wes Belter and Pete Silbernagel. And so they had approached me, hey, have you ever thought about running for office? We know you were involved with Rick's and his campaign. We want you to run in our spot. At the time, I was 29 years old, and no, that is nothing I had ever thought of. My parents were active in local party politics, but no one had ever run for office before. And so maybe it was just me being young and naive, but I said, sure, I'll do it. Well, I ended up winning. So I served District 22 in the State House of Representatives from 2016 until 2022. In 2021, Secretary Al Jagger, who had served in this office for 30 years, announced he was not running for re-election. The day Secretary Jagger announced he wasn't running, out of nowhere, I had several phone calls. Hey, you should take a look at this. Not something I ever aspired to do. Wasn't even on my radar. But it was people I respected who suggested that. After I told them no a couple times, and they kept saying go for it, then my wife and I thought about it, and we threw our hat in the ring and ran. Announced in January of 2022, and then was elected in November of 2022, and then officially took office January 1st, 2023 as North Dakota's 15th Secretary of State.
Okay. So what are your main responsibilities?
Yeah, so we've got, I think, over 40 different duties here in the Secretary of State's office, so we cover a number of different things. The one we get most recognized for is we oversee the state's election process. The Secretary of State in North Dakota is the chief election officer in North Dakota. So we partner with all 53 counties across the state and their county auditors. Each individual county runs their own election with the oversight from the North Dakota Secretary of State's office. So we have those partnerships with all 53 counties. Again, they conduct their elections. In simple terms, I'm the head referee of North Dakota's elections. Again, I could run through the whole list. We might run out of time though, Brian, but it's another thing we're recognized for is if you want to start a business in North Dakota and become a registered business, you file that with the Secretary of State's office. A fun title I have, I'm the Commissioner of Combative Sports. If you want to host, it used to be the boxing commissioner, but if you want to hold a sanctioned fight in the state of North Dakota, that's part of our licensing division, you would get that license through the Secretary of State's office. And then we have a commission made up of 7 combative sports commissioners. And so we're in charge of making sure a promoter has the doctors on hand, the proper referees, that the venue they're hosting qualifies. Again, making sure that they're in compliance with North Dakota's combative sports laws.
All right, it's a little bit of everything.
Yes, a whole gamut of things.
Yeah, so to help you out in that, how big is the Secretary of State's office?
So we've got 33 employees in the Secretary of State's office, spread across 5 different divisions. I touched on elections, touched on business services. We've got a fiscal team here in our office, as well as a licensing and notary division, and then a communications division. And the communications division is something new to our office. My predecessor didn't have a comms team. We do, and that's something we're really proud of that we've instituted over the last year and a half. Very active on social media channels, getting information about voting in elections or business services or notary information. We really have taken pride with the amount of output we're putting out there for North Dakota citizens to consume, to learn about, again, the 40 different duties that our office has.
Yeah. Which kind of goes into the next question. What are some of those other recent initiatives, whether that's communications or your website's been updated and so forth, voting machines, information about that?
Yeah, so our Secretary of State's website was just reformatted several months ago. That was a main initiative I took on when I was campaigning. The old website had all the information. As you can imagine, 40 different functions of our office. It can be very in-depth of the knowledge that you could take from our website. But when I say it was all there, it was all there.
Right.
It wasn't really formatted in a user-friendly interface, so we cleaned some of that up. It's more, I guess, 21st century looking as opposed to looking like a late 90s website. I was told to have a user-friendly website you can find your information you're seeking in 3 clicks or less. I think we're getting close. We are refining that website weekly to try to make that. If you're looking for your polling location, or if you're looking for how do I get an LLC, you can find that in 3 clicks or less. That's our goal. I mentioned our social media presence. That's another new initiative. The Secretary of State's office really didn't have much of a presence. We have videos, tutorials, pamphlets, infographics, all sorts of things for the public to consume regarding elections, business filings, etc. As we had our June primary, we were very active in getting the trusted source of information on elections out to the public, and we're very pleased with how that was consumed by the public. Along with that is a YouTube channel, again, to the camera videos walking through step by step of that election process, one that gains the public's trust in the system. We're not a get out the vote operation here in the Secretary of State's office. We are an education and informational hub for the public. But I feel if the public trusts the process and are informed on the process, then we might have an increased voter turnout, which if that's an effect of that, then I think that's just fantastic.
So how does your office contribute to promoting transparency or accountability within state government that you can?
So we are North Dakota's big filing cabinet, I like to call it. Again, I mentioned the LLCs. If you want to find business information about a registered entity in North Dakota or a charitable organization, you have questions for that, you have to register with the state of North Dakota. Then you can be in good standing. Or if you're not in good standing, we'd have that on file too. So if you're conducting business with somebody or someone, you can open up our filing cabinet. Most of that is online, or you can call our office for that information and find out information on business Y or business X or charity Z or charity Y. Glean more information from that. Campaign finance. We are the campaign finance filing cabinet for the state of North Dakota. So if you are a candidate, if you are a political action committee, if you're a political party and you are receiving campaign contributions or spending campaign contributions for a political purpose, you would file a report with the state of North Dakota in our campaign finance platform. That, going back to your previous question, that is something we are currently improving. We have a campaign finance portal. I would say it's not very user-friendly. The legislature allocated dollars for us to upgrade that system. We're currently in the middle of that. So for the 2024 election, we will still have the old site, but then looking ahead to 2026, very excited for a user-friendly campaign finance website. User-friendly for the candidate and people making those filings, but also user-friendly for the public who wants to get that transparency arm of who's funding candidates or what are candidates spending their campaign contributions on.
As far as elections, which is what most people associate your office with, what role does the office take? As you said, the state auditors and whatnot in each of the counties kind of actually run the elections.
Yeah.
So how do you help them out?
So we are mandated by state law to conduct an election training in an election year Typically, we hold that in March. So we bring all 53 county auditors to Bismarck. We conduct a training. That training goes over the processes, the equipment. We train them how to train their poll workers. And we've gone above and beyond that. We held regional training. So along with our mandated statewide training, we go to the counties, answer any questions they may have about ballot layout or the equipment or polling location setup. In the lead up to vote by mail or early voting, things like that. So we hosted 7 or 8 regional trainings prior to the primary election. We're going to do the same here as we head to the general election in November. Going out, having that face-to-face interaction with all 53 counties is so important. Again, we are the referee in the election process. We do have election laws, but then also we have best practices. And when we get everyone in the room, a county auditor would say, you know what, we've done this as a best practice, and we can share those informations. We've got an election handbook, an election guide that we are also mandated by state law to produce. Those types of things go into that, where you have the definitive state law, but then we also put that into not legalese. We put it in common language. It's easily understood for the auditors to, again, train their poll workers, but then also for poll workers to have that. Poll workers, they're not people we recruit. That, again, that's in charge of each individual county is in charge of finding their own poll workers. But we help provide that information to them. We mentioned our social media channels. If you're curious about being a poll worker, maybe it can sound intimidating, but once you're there, our office provides a ton of resources that we share with the counties and that share with the poll workers to ensure that you know what you're doing and you can feel comfortable in playing a pivotal role in conducting our elections.
Sure. One of the things, the last number of elections, federally and so forth, people bring up security and whatnot. How do we ensure that is taking place in North Dakota? We have good, secure elections.
Yeah, absolutely we do. So the election equipment is not connected to the internet. Our vote by mail process, 36 counties opt in to vote by mail. So what that means is those counties mail out ballot applications, not ballots. Ballot applications to every active voter in their central voter file. The voter then, once they receive that application, they can choose to fill it out, which we have a voter ID law in North Dakota. They would put their voter ID number on that application, sign it, date it, and then send it back to the county. Only upon receipt of that application and identity verification would then a ballot be mailed out to that voter so we know who it is who's receiving that ballot. That's not the process in some other states. And so as I'm out there educating the public on North Dakota's process, it's very important to note there's 50 different sets of election laws in the United States. In my opinion, some more secure than others. I think we've got the best system in the country. Again, because we have a voter ID law, we have that application process where you verify that you are the voter, and then you say you are who you say you are, and you live where you say you live. So there's a lot of checks and balances along the way. And again, our equipment is not connected to the internet. So when you take your paper ballot, fill it out, and slide it into the paper ballot tabulator, those results aren't transmitted automatically to the Secretary of State's office and online. Those results are put on a flash drive and then imported to the Secretary of State's office later, again, through a secure portal. So the actual machine is not connected to the internet. Again, that's not the process everywhere else either. So it's very important to note that we've got secure processes. And so what you see and hear in the news in other areas of the country, just keep in mind that may not always apply and probably doesn't apply to North Dakota.
Sure. What role do you see with technology kind of supporting that mission? And maybe, now there's such a talk about AI.
Yeah.
Will that figure into any part of the picture?
So AI, I think, can be a useful tool. We're not going to use it for North Dakota's elections right now.
Sure.
We're not going to use it in 2024. Looking ahead to 2026, I don't foresee the use of AI in the election administration process. I know through campaigns, there's some states have said if you're going to use AI to campaign on flyers or television commercials, you'll have to have a disclaimer: this advertisement was created with AI. But as far as the administration of an election, which our office is in charge of, I don't foresee us using AI. But technology in elections, something we do use is our electronic poll books. So that is, if you're a voter, you go in to your polling location, you have your ID, you get that scanned, that automatically goes into our e-poll book, which is that iPad, if you're familiar with voting in person. And then those iPads are located across the state in every polling location, and they all talk to each other through a secure portal. So those are connected to the internet. But again, it has nothing to do with ballot handling, just the information that's to ensure one person, one vote. So if you're voting at the Bismarck Civic Center, you check in there. You can't get in your car and drive across town to a church and vote at that polling location. You will have already checked in. You will not be able to vote again. So that technology ensures one person, one vote instantaneously. And same thing if you're voting by absentee. County official gets your absentee ballot. They have your voter ID number. They check you in on that e-poll book. So then if you were to choose to vote in person on election day, they'll say, oh, sorry, we already have you marked as voting absentee. So that has been a huge use of technology for the election process that, again, ensures integrity and security.
As far as some of the, we'll say, underserved groups in North Dakota, how do we make sure that they have those IDs so that they can vote?
So there's 4 forms of valid ID that can be acceptable to vote in North Dakota. We're all familiar with the North Dakota driver's license or a non-driver's ID. A long-term care certificate for some of our elderly population that lives in a long-term care facility. You can use a long-term care certificate, then you would be voting where that long-term care facility is located. And then a tribal ID is also the 4th form of acceptable ID. The DOT is our partner in elections. North Dakota is the only state without voter registration, and we have a voter ID law that replaces that. So the DOT is in charge of our, you hear voter rolls or voter registration rolls. It's really the DOT that controls that. Our tribal partners, though, they may not all have a physical residential address. So the DOT, they've gone out to our tribal lands and worked with our tribal partners and made sure they had those tribal IDs, which then they can use, take that to the polling location, ensure that their vote is cast and can be counted.
The same type of effort for those military who are serving actively overseas?
Yeah, so UOCAVA, that is the Uniformed and Overseas Citizen Absentee Voting Act. That's a federal law. Absentee voting in North Dakota starts 40 days prior to Election Day. UOCAVA, they have 5 extra days. So we have outreach. Our election team and I have visited both Air Force bases here in North Dakota to ensure if we have any of our military population overseas that they are getting the proper information and are granted the proper time to get a ballot, fill it out, and ensure that their vote counts too.
Sure. So when the election is all over, how do you certify those results? How do you get them in and give them that final seal of approval?
So on election night, you'll see, you're watching the television or listening to the radio, and they'll say, the Associated Press has declared Michael Howe the winner of the Secretary of State's race in North Dakota. It's important to note that's an unofficial result. An election result does not become official until the state canvassing board meets. But prior to that, the county canvassing boards meet. So all 53 counties have a canvassing board. They go through the election results, certify those results, and then 2 days later, the state canvassing board meets and then certifies those results. And only upon certification then are the results official. So yeah, people want to say, well, I want to know who won on election night. You can get a pretty good idea based with our paper ballot tabulation machines and the early reporting coming through. But an election result truly is not official until the state canvassing board meets. And then at that state canvassing board, we'll determine if a race is close enough that would trigger an automatic recount. A race could be close enough where the candidate could be granted the opportunity to demand a recount. An automatic recount, the state picks up the tab on that recount process, where if it's in demand recount status, the candidate then would have to fork up the money and have that recount there. So again, it's critically important to note, election results, though someone may be declared a winner by a media outlet, it's really not official until 15 days after Election Day in North Dakota.
Got it. Well, let's switch gears again and talk a little bit about business duties and functions. You mentioned earlier about businesses registering and so forth. How does the office support those entrepreneurs, startup businesses, or existing in terms of registration and compliance? I know you mentioned getting through that website in 3 clicks.
Yeah. So in 2018, or prior to 2018, I should say, North Dakota was a paper-based system. So you'd fill out, piece of paper, mail it, or drop it off at the Secretary of State's office. It's very time-consuming. May take a while for your business to be formed, or your entity to be formed. In 2018, Secretary Jagger took on a massive project to try to get all of that online. Mm-hmm. So if you're familiar with North Dakota's online business portal, it's called First Stop, which is a software program where you can go online, fill out all your information, hit submit, and that still has to be processed by somebody here at the Secretary of State's office, but it's all done online, it's all tracked online, all that work can be searchable online. So we're very proud. In 2023, our business filing turnaround time was increased by 43%. So where it was taking almost 6 days to process your business filing, now on average it takes about 3.7 days. And that's the average. Some days we can get it done that day or the very next morning. Time is money when you're starting a business. Mm-hmm. People, if you're going to start a business, you're taking that risk. You want to get going right away. Secretary Jagger dubbed the Secretary of State's office the front door to every business. And what he meant was, before you really can do anything, you need to be in compliance and be in good standing with the state of North Dakota than to either meet with a lender or get some grant money to start your business or many other things, insurance-wise, tax-wise. Mm-hmm. But you need that registration with our office first. And knowing that people are sticking their neck out there starting a business, we don't want to be a hindrance to anybody. And so we can move along that administration process as smoothly as possible, as fast as possible for that person taking that risk, starting their own business. It's a very encouraging thing. And Forbes Advisor, the last 2 years, has ranked North Dakota the #1 place to start a business. And a multitude of factors go into place. The Secretary of State's office plays a small role in that ranking, mm-hmm. but part of it was the low cost of formation fees. And then the other part of it is, and that goes in with the rest of the business climate in North Dakota, low tax structure, easy way to get loans and meet with lenders here in North Dakota. So we've got a very business-friendly environment, and I'm proud to say the Secretary of State's office does play a minor part in that.
Notaries are one of those things that every once in a while catch the public's attention. What is their role, and what is your office's role with the notary?
So if you want to become a notary public, you would, again, file with our office. Then we would send you the stamp, and a term of a notary commission is 4 years. After 4 years, you'd have to send in paperwork again to re-up that commission. Our office also regulates notary commissions. So if you have broken the laws of being a notary public, the most common one we see is you notarize your own signature on a document. We can levy fines and penalties on that. You could choose not to pay the penalty and just say, take my notary stamp away. For the most part, it's an honest mistake that happens. People just forget. They're willing to pay that penalty. They can keep the notary stamp. But things like that is what our office does in relations to notaries and notary stamps.
Sure. Other duties, functions, we had a question as far as implementation or streamlining administrative processes, efficiencies. Are there any other initiatives that you're looking for in the future? Legislative session's coming up.
Yeah.
And I haven't heard any legislative talk about new bills or anything like that. But is there anything else that you're looking to streamline?
Well, I could say internally, I talked about us increasing that business filing process. I'd like to get that from, I said 3.7 days, get that down to same day. How did we do that in 2023? Well, we restructured our office hours. Our good folks in our business services team and our licensing team, they're taking walk-ins, they're taking phone calls. That then takes them away from processing filings that are coming in. So we restructured the office hours a little bit for that team, where half the team comes in an hour before business starts, and then they've got an hour of dedicated time to just go through the queue and try to get those filings processed as fast as they can. So we'll keep looking at just internally, not necessarily anything that has to happen legislatively, but our internal processes to speed up that filing. Campaign finance has been a major topic. Again, we are the filing cabinet for campaign finance. There's been some discussion whether or not our office should be the enforcement of campaign finance. We received a lot of calls, hey, I think so-and-so is not following campaign finance law. We have to say, well, talk to your local law enforcement officials, and they're the ones in charge of if you break the law, you must speak to them. I've heard some discussions, whether that's the Secretary of State's office, maybe the Ethics Commission, taking a look at that. But that's something maybe on the horizon that our office would be tasked with. I don't know if it's anything we'll be advocating for, but certainly we'll have those conversations with legislators as we look ahead.
Sure. So last couple of questions. And probably the biggest one, I ask this of everybody, if the Secretary of State's office vanished from state government, what's the impact on the people in the state?
Well, our elections wouldn't have any oversight. North Dakota, we're a top-down election state. So I mentioned I'm the chief election official. The 53 counties and run their own election. A state like Wisconsin is a bottom-up process. So the local political subdivisions all run their own elections, meaning their ballots could look different, their equipment looks different, their rules and laws could all be different. It must work in Wisconsin. I think that'd be a very difficult endeavor for North Dakota to take over. So we're all on a uniform system. We all use the same equipment, we all use the same ballot layout, all follow the same rules and processes. And so you wouldn't have that main office overseeing that entire process. Transparency would be gone. I talked about First Stop and how easy it is to search and look at business records or nonprofits or charities to find out, are they in good standing? Who's running these things? For nonprofits, you can look at financial information. The Secretary of State's office isn't there. That's really kind of a key on that filing cabinet that would be locked, that the public wouldn't have access to. So we want to be that trusted source of election information, but we also want to be the transparency arm of North Dakota government and North Dakota business too.
Right. And the last little thing, going back to the idea of poll workers. How young can you be to be a poll worker, and what kind of training do they get?
So you can actually be 16 years old and be a poll worker. You to be a qualified elector and a qualified voter for the state of North Dakota, you must be 18 years old, a United States citizen, and a resident of North Dakota. But to be a poll worker, you can be 16 years old. And I know, speaking with some counties, some social studies classes have offered class credit for high school students that are under the age of 18 to work the election, or even if you are 18 years old and work and still in high school, getting class credit for being a poll worker. You are compensated to be a poll worker now, not very much, but you must go through a training prior to the election. You are also compensated for your time for attending that training. So you have to go through a training. Most counties offer multiple trainings. Now, you only get paid to attend one training, but if you want to attend multiple ones, you absolutely can. And so there's a multitude of different duties, from being an election judge to being a greeter, all sorts of things that we find are and you'll never be put in a position where if you're a new poll worker, you're thrown into the fire. Typically, county auditors do a very good job of placing new poll workers with veteran poll workers to help that along. And I tell county auditors, remind your poll workers that if a question arises, by all means, raise your hand, get the county auditor there or the head of the polling location there to help answer your question. That is A-OK. But it is a great responsibility, and also we find out that people do it once, they want to keep doing it. Mm-hmm. They really enjoy serving their community. It's a social function too. If you're sitting there all day from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., you're going to see a lot of folks that you know coming in through and say, hey, here's your ballot. I still need to see your ID, even though I know who you are. But it really is a fun thing and a great way to be civically engaged in your communities.
Absolutely. And just your final thoughts, I guess, about whether it's the Secretary of State position or the work that this office does. What would you like people to take away about the Secretary of State's office?
We've got 33 excellent public servants in our office that they want to not only serve the public, but also, while they're doing that, provide excellent customer service. When I was campaigning for this job, I'd hear that a lot. Hey, you've got great people in that office. And now, in the role, as I'm out traveling the state, I talked to so-and-so on the phone, and they've resolved my issue just like that. Our staff takes great pride in that, and that makes me proud to work alongside our 33 team members here in the Secretary of State's office with a multitude of functions, as we have discussed already today. But that is something I really hang my hat on, that we provide excellent customer service every single day to the citizens of North Dakota.
All right, well, great. Thank you again very much for taking time to educate citizens about the office.
It's my honor. Thanks, Brian.
And thanks again for listening to 701 Civics as we dive in and learn about the civics processes and people and positions in North Dakota. Please be sure also to stop and rate us on the podcast format that you're listening to so we can continue to increase our audience and be better citizens of our state and of our nation.